Hello, my name is Brian Terumo, and I'm a perfusion student here at MSOE. I'm here at 4 a.m. on a Saturday to make a video for you guys about various different procedures here in the CVOR perfusion room in the morning. Primarily I'm going to go through setting up a pump, priming the pump, and setting up a backup. And these are some of the things that I and some of my fellow students had some issues with when we first started in our school year, because they're things that you can only do with a fresh setup. There's a pump down on the 6th floor, which I'm sure you're aware of, where you can do some practicing of priming, but the stuff's already set up, and sometimes it can be a little difficult to figure out exactly where certain connections are made and how things are set up exactly. So I figured I'd make this video, and hopefully it's helpful to you guys. So normally when you come into the room, there will be a pump already set up, and you're going to immediately start priming that, and after you're done priming, you're going to build a backup to put your pump back together after your case. As you're probably already aware though, you will be asked to do a priming exam in which you will be timed. And in that exam, you will actually start with a bare pump, such as the one that I have here, and you will come in, build a backup in the morning. That will not be part of the timed portion. But then you will set up the pump and prime it as part of your priming exam. Now, I don't know what your time is going to be. We had a time of 35 minutes to set up the pump, prime it, get it into the room, and perform the various procedures in the room to get ready to go on pump. But that was with the old RX-25 oxygenator, which was actually a considerably more complicated setup than the new FX-25 setup that we have now. So I know they have plans to shave that time, but it will still be a similar deal. So I'm going to start with a bare pump and show you guys how to set that up. The first thing to do is grab the actual oxygenator and reservoir itself, and you're going to insert the reservoir onto this post through this hole. So you just slide it on and lift this post up until you're able to fit that oxygenator on. And then you want to take your CDI and manifold line and just kind of drape it over the CDI holder there, just to keep it out of the way. Next, you're going to want to move your oxygenator over to its holder. Let me see if I can get a better view of this here. I apologize, my camera does not zoom out very well, and so I have to have it placed kind of far away. But there's a clip that holds it onto the back of the reservoir. So you take that clip off and you can pull it down, and you just insert it up through the front of the holder and slide it back and close. Next, you're going to grab your bucket full of all your lines, and you're going to place it in the basket holder here with the tape side. Hopefully you can see that, but there's a green tape in there away from the pump. Set it in here like that. And you're going to take your arterial line, which is the one with the red cap on it, and you're going to pull it out of the paper in here until you see the red tape on the line. Now everything past that tape is sterile, so it has to remain inside that paper. So you pull it out that far, and then we're going to make that connection here at the Okay, so to make this connection here, I'm just going to take the connectors off of, or the caps, excuse me, off of the arterial line and the oxygenator. So I'm trying to do this kind of backwards so you can see it on camera. And then this is the first connection you're going to make. This is something that apparently a lot of students struggle with in the beginning. But in order to do these, you don't try to push it straight on. You start with it angled from any direction, but you just angle it on until it slides on, and then you just kind of work it until it's all the way on. You want the tubing to be covering the second barb. And after you make that connection, you're going to grab your recirc line. Let me see. It's hard to get this all on camera here. Let me zoom out. You're going to grab your recirc line, and I'm going to cover this in the backup section, but just again make sure that this stopcock is seated fully. From the manufacturer, they seem to be loose. So you're going to orient this in this way, and you're going to make this connection to the oxygenator at this top cap. Make sure while you do this you drape these lines off your leg or something so that they're not on the ground. So remove those caps. This one has to be screwed off for some reason. There's that connection made. Now we're going to attach the recirculation line to the back of the cardiotomy. Okay, so here's that same line, and we're just going to make this connection to the cardiotomy, usually using this back port here. Again, just remove the caps and work that connection on. Okay, next we're going to take the lines for the vent and the suckers and put those into their pump heads. So in the pack here, grab the coil of lines, and you want to then take these and roll them underneath the arterial line so that they sit correctly when they go up to the table. Okay, now we're going to take the green line, which is the vent line, and put it in the pump head. So to do that, we're going to lift up the cover, and we're going to take our line. Let me start as if this is closed. We're going to rotate this so that the left side is open, and this has to go in the pump head between these two green tapes here. So we're going to put it down at the bottom of the pump head, pull this lever to close that connection, rotate the other side open, put that in, and close that. So you'll see this line is hanging above the back of the roller here, and that's how we set the pumps up. Then you just close the lid on top of that. Now we're going to take the free end, and we're going to make that connection to the cardiotomy here. So you'll see these three connections right here. I'm going to go to the far inside one and just remove the caps and make that connection. Now we're going to do the same thing with the sucker lines. I apologize for this camera here, but this is all I've got to work with. So the sucker lines are a little different just in that there are two lines. There's a white line and a yellow line, but they go in the same way. You just set them one on top of the other, trying to keep the tapes lined up. Open up the side just as with the vent, put them into the pump head, and then close the lid. Now this is a point where a lot of students make a mistake, and they leave this outflow side going over the inlet of the vent, and you want all the inlet lines on top of all the outflow lines. So we're going to put these under the vent inflow. So you'll see we have the sucker lines on top, the inflow vent line on top, and all of the outflow lines are at the bottom. And now we're just going to make the connection at the back of the cardiotomy for these two lines, just as with the vent. Next we're going to attach the venous line to the reservoir. So that should be pretty much the last thing in your basket here if you pulled all the other ancillary stuff out. So you'll see this, we have our pre-bypass filter on here, and we're just going to roll this out of the basket. Come down here. We're going to take this line and just tuck it over here for now. And this is where we make our venous connection. So we're just going to remove these caps and make this connection, being careful to support this in the back as we push it on so that we don't break anything. Okay, I've gone ahead and grabbed the rest of the stuff from the back up. We're going to take our CDI sensor and our level sensors and just put those in the tray over here on the pump, and the person who gets the pump in the morning will use those when they're priming. Next I'm going to grab the arterial pump head out of here. This actually would have been the first connection I would make. We used to have these pre-attached to the reservoir and oxygenator on the old setups, and you'll definitely want to see if you can try to find a correct orientation for that. It'll save you time. But this is the arterial pump head line. You'll see again it has two tapes here, and we're going to make that connection next. Alright, so we're going to try to find sort of the natural curvature of this line. You can kind of see how it wants to lay. And we're going to make the connection to the bottom of the reservoir. Open up the pump head here. Sit the line inside the head. Close that connection, making sure that this line isn't kinked anywhere. Wrap it around the head to the other side, and now this free end is going to attach to the oxygenator. There's really no good angle for me to show you this from, but here we have the outflow from the pump head, and let's see if I can rotate this. Here is the inlet into the oxygenator. So that's where we're going to make that connection next. Again, make sure you support the oxygenator while you make this connection. And one thing I would suggest for you guys to do, at least in the beginning, is to carry some alcohol pads around with you, because you're probably going to contaminate a lot of these connections in the beginning, and it'll just save you time to have them already on you, so you can just quick re-sterilize. Okay, we're going to take our gas line and we're going to put the filter side up, and we're going to attach that to this, get that over here, this barbed connector back here. Slide that all the way on. And the other side of this gas line is going to go on to the oxygenator below the water lines. The gas inlet is down here. After we've attached our gas line, we're going to attach our scavenge line, which is usually tucked up under the pump here, and we're just going to attach that to this back port on the oxygen. Next we're going to mount the pressure transducers, and on this pump run today I'm doing valves, so I will be using retrograde, so there will be 3 pressure transducers. On some cases where you do not have retrograde, you will only have 2. In any case, the 2 you will always have will be the arterial pressure transducer, which does have a line attached to it, and that will go to the far left in this holder with this side up, with the line connection coming out the top. And the next one will be the reservoir pressure, and that will go just to the right of the arterial. The last one is the retrograde one, which has no line pre-attached to it. That will get attached to the retrograde line in the OR. So, and that's going to go to the far right. So here we have the 3 pressure transducer lines, and you'll notice these are all labeled differently on the different machines, but the arterial one will always either say ART or have an A on it like that, or be marked red, something similar to that. So that one is going to go to the arterial transducer. And the thing that gets kind of tricky a little bit sometimes is that now we're left with 2, and on this one's marked V for venous, but a lot of times it isn't, it's just left blank. And if there's one that has blue on it, such as this one, that's actually for the retrograde line. So the unmarked one, if there is one, goes to the venous, and then obviously the blue, the last one, goes to the retrograde. Next we're going to attach the arterial pressure monitoring bulb, and this is going to go to the pressure gauge here. So we'll take the yellow cap off the end, and we're just going to loosely put that onto that connection. We're going to be removing that later during priming, so you don't want to shove that on there all the way. While we're over here, we're going to take the line off the venous pressure transducer and connect it to the stopcock on the cardiotomy where it goes. Let me get that. So you'll see there's a stopcock here. This is the positive pressure relief valve on it, and this venous line gets connected to the side of that stopcock. Now we're going to go around to the back and make the connection for that pressure bulb that we just put on. So now we're back at the back of the pump. This is the end of the line coming off that pressure bulb, and you will notice here on the recirculation line that there is that stopcock here, and there are 2 caps on it. One is blue and one is yellow. The yellow cap is a closed cap. Fluid will not flow through that. This blue cap is actually an open cap. If we were to fill this up, we would get fluid coming out of that. And obviously we don't want anything leaking out, so we're going to make this a connection to that cap. And then just rotate this stopcock up to the yellow position just to close that off. You shouldn't get any flow out of there, but just to be safe, rotate that up. Now we're going to take our fill line, which is split with a Y like this. It has white caps on it, or a white cap on it, and it splits into 2 lines. And we're going to make that connection to the top of the cardiotomy. So hopefully you can see this here, but this is the connection for that line. Let me pull this cap off here. You'll see this is sort of a different kind of cap, so you can just pull the whole thing off, but it also opens up here. That's how you know that's the correct cap. And we're just going to take the white cap off of this end and connect it there. And now these ends are going to be tucked under the blue cloth on top. Next we're going to attach our vacuum line. This is the one that has the blue connectors all over it, and I'll mention this in the backup section, but just make sure that the Duraclamp on this is open. If this were to be closed and the vacuum regulator would be on, you could accidentally put vacuum on your reservoir, which would be a bad. So here I have the long end of the vacuum line. You can see the other side has the Y with the little stubby end there. This is the long end, and this is going to attach to the vacuum trap here. And I'm actually still in the front of the pump. Normally I would do this from behind, but just to make it easier for me to not have to move the camera around as much. That will connect like that. And now we'll take this end down and make the connection at the top of the reservoir. So here I have the other end of the vacuum line, and this is a vented cap that's on the top of the reservoir, and this is where we're going to attach the other end of the vacuum line. Still left in your basket here, you will have these two lines, a red line and a white line. These are used for the cell saver. You can just set these aside. So now we have our cardioplegia lines left in the basket. Those stay just as they are, and then we have our fill lines on top here. We're just going to take this blue paper cloth here, put it over the basket, and tuck these edges in. Next, we're going to set up the cardioplegia. So this is the Quest system here, and the best way to get this set up is to remove these two small pouches here. One of them has a green stopcock on it, and the other one has a yellow stopcock on it. So we're going to take those out of the package, open up the Quest, open up the green and yellow side doors here, and then put the pouches into the corresponding section here. So the green one we're going to put into the green side. We're going to insert all 4 holes into the pegs, and the same with the yellow side. You'll see that these pouches are sort of already concave one direction. I don't think it really matters which way they go in, but it's just easier to insert it if you put the domed side in, so it just fits in there really nicely. And then you want these lines coming out the top slots here, and then close these doors. Now we'll open up the large door, and we'll remove the rest of this from the pack. So the easiest way to do that is there are 3 connecting points in this packaging. The lines attach in both of the sides, and then this attaches here at the top. So we're going to grab this top portion with our right hand, loop the lines over our arm, and then just pull the whole thing out. We're going to insert this onto the top of the Quest here. Let me see if I can get this camera. So we've inserted this onto this black knob, making sure that this rear line is not pinched as we push it on. We're going to push that on fully and then rotate this until it sort of doesn't really click, but you can definitely feel that it has seated into place. We're going to take the rest of these lines and sort of roll them up over the top. And we're going to do a similar thing down here with this larger pouch. There's a blue ball in this which will sit into a corresponding divot in the Quest, and that's how you are sure that you have this oriented correctly. Another way is to look and see, it should say blood on the left and crystalloid on the right. So we're going to make all these little connections here. Alright, coming up, we're going to seat these hoses into the slots at the top of the Quest, and then close this door. And at this point now we can close the front cover, and make the rest of the Quest connections. So I'm going to kind of get these lines out of the way. We're going to take our green side, remove the cap on the left, and sometimes these are really tight. Usually they come right off, but sometimes they're really tight and you have to actually get a clamp. So let me do that. So I've got a clamp here because this connection was really tight. Just going to loosen that a bit. Okay, so now we're going to make the green connection here. Remove this cap. Screw this on. And then do the same thing on the yellow side, making sure that we have these lines over the larger lines coming out of the Quest. We don't want them underneath, we want them on top. And now we'll move around to the back of the Quest to make the rest of the connections. So I'm not sure how well this is going to come out on camera. There's a lot of lines going around here, so hopefully you're able to see what's going on. We have sort of this mess of larger 1/4 inch lines, and there's a tape connecting those. We'll remove that tape, and I like to hang the right side line up on the hanger there where the gas lines usually sit. And then this left line, make sure that it's under everything else, seat it in the connections along the side of the Quest. And now this tail end can be tucked into the Quest. Up until recently, this line was really never used, but we just got a new surgeon here, Dr. Weiss, who uses del nido cardioplegia, which is a crystalloid cardioplegia, and so now this line is actually used sometimes. Dr. O'Hare is right now trialing that. I'm not sure what it's going to be like by the time you see this video, but this line may or may not be used. Now for these connections, this is with retrograde attached. So if you have just antegrade, this is going to end here. This tail piece isn't going to be on the line, and you're just going to seat this in the air detector here and run it through the antegrade clamp. But as it is, we're going to seat the red, push down on this. Let me see if I can get this in here. You'll see there's these two clamp buttons here. The red one is for antegrade, so we're going to push that down, seat that tubing in there, come around and do the blue, which is retrograde, and then seat this section of tubing with the red line up into this air detector here. Now you'll see we have this coil of smaller diameter tubing. We're going to remove the tape from that, and are you able to see this? There is another clamp connection at the top here. We're going to push that down, make a loop with this tubing, and insert it into that clamp. Let's see if I can get the camera down. So hopefully you can see there is a loop here. Make sure there's no kink in this tubing in here. And now we're going to take this free end, and this is going to attach to the top of the cardioid. So I have the free end of that smaller diameter line. I'm going to come under the inflow, sucker, and vent lines and make that connection here at the top of the cardiotomy. Now, people set their pumps up differently. So the stopcock may be here, it may be in the back, it may be over here. It doesn't really matter so long as it's attached to one of these rear connections here. So now I have the other line coming out the back of the Quest here, the one that was on the right that I hung up earlier. This one has the red cap on it. I'm just going to seat this into the back of the Quest on the right hand side, the same as with this other line. And now we're going to make that connection, which actually attaches down to the recirc line. So you see we're down here at the recirc line. Here's that stopcock, and I'm sure you noticed earlier there's this stub here on this line, and that's where we're going to attach the blood side of the Quest. And this is probably one of the harder connections on this setup. So to help make this easier for you, you can sort of lubricate this barb with an alcohol prep pad, but this is where this connection is made. And on this one, I have found, even with an alcohol prep pad, it's sort of impossible to get it over that second barb, but just try to get it on there as best as you can. So now we need to gun tie a lot of these high pressure connections that we've made. So I grabbed 6 gun ties, and I'll show you where I place those. 5 of them are required, and the 6th one is not really needed, but I find to be helpful. But the required connections are here at the bottom of the reservoir, at the inflow to the oxygenator, at the connection of the stub line, the outflow from the oxygenator of the arterial line, and then this Quest connection for the blood cardioplegia. The 6th connection, the 6th gun tie, I just like to put around here loosely. This doesn't actually get tightened down right now because this pre-bypass filter is going to be removed later, but just to have it there after priming, I like to just put this on loosely around here and just let it hang there. So I'll show you one of these connections. All the rest of them work exactly the same. Okay, so I'm at the outflow from the oxygenator with the arterial line here. So you just take the gun tie, wrap it around. I like to put these between the first and the second barb and snug it down and kind of crank on it a little bit. I mean, support the connection with your hand to make sure you don't break anything. But the whole point of these gun ties is to help prevent these lines from popping off. So you really want these to be snug. And then you just take your gun, put it on, squeeze the trigger, and it will tighten it another ratchet or two if it's able to, and cut it off. And afterwards, you should not be able to spin that. If you can rotate that, it's not tight enough. Okay, a couple of last ancillary things here to do until this pump is set up. We need to attach our flow probe, which is usually kept on the back of the Quest here. And bring that around, and it comes up on the arterial line, making sure to keep track of the directional flow arrow. You want the arrow pointing in the direction of flow. Put it around the arterial line and then close that. It'll just snap shut. Okay, we have our bubble detector here. These are kept on little holders somewhere on this large post here, kind of in all different areas. But we open this up, and we're going to put this right below the reservoir on the outflow and clamp that down. And lastly here, we're going to take our red temperature probe line, come around behind some of this stuff, and make this connection up here at the venous return.